Okay, I think we could go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining to the Office of Economic Development Business Information Session. My name is Margaret McGee, and I'm the Business Services Manager. Business Services assists entrepreneurs and business owners in starting and growing their business. We help in navigating through the different departments within city government to obtain licenses, permits and licenses. We also connect the business community with organizations that can provide technical assistance, incentives, resources, and other programs beneficial in operating a business. One way we do this is to host business information sessions. These sessions are held throughout the year, and topics are gathered from entrepreneurs, surveys, and information we collect from the business community. This is the last of 3 sessions focusing on emergency preparedness and insurance. Today we have Ms. Anna Wynn. She's with NOLA Ready, and she's a communications director. She will provide information about NOLA Ready, resources, and how to sign up for their alerts. To keep down distractions, please keep your video turned off and mute your speakers. Since we have such a small crowd, if you want to ask, it depends on Ms. Wynn, how she want to do it. If you want to ask questions throughout her presentations, I'm pretty sure she'll be fine with that. All handouts, if there are any available, will be shared within 24 to 48 hours once the meeting has ended. And Ms. Wynn will probably share a lot of links for you guys to kind of like just go to for additional information. So I'll actually turn it over to Ms. Wynn now, and she could tell you more.
Hi, thanks, Margaret. Hi, thank you all for joining, and thanks for having me. Like Margaret mentioned, my name is Anna Wynn. I'm actually the Public Engagement Director for NOLA Ready. We are the public engagement branch for the city's Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness Department. And so I do want to preface by saying that, while I am from New Orleans, born and raised, I am not a business owner. So the things that I'm going to go over with you all are really best practices that we've gathered from various agencies like SBA and just, from national and local organizations. And so while I am more than happy to take questions throughout the presentation, just know that, there might be some more specifics about the business side that I may not be as familiar with. So please bear with me, and we'll go from here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like Margaret said, NOLA Ready is a city's emergency preparedness campaign. If you are not signed up for our text alerts, I highly recommend that you do. It is a list that I protect with every power that I have, so that we make sure that we're only ever sending out emergency information to the public. And so we never send out information about cleanup events or workshops or seminars, because we feel very strongly about protecting the integrity of that list, because we want to make sure that people continue to hear our message whenever we send something out. And so, if you're signed up for our emergency alerts, you know that we send out information about heat, about tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding. You think of the emergency, and we'll probably send out an alert about it. That's at least what it feels like these days. So, I'm going to go over some best practices. Really all of this information is information that's available in our business continuity guide that was put together about 5 years ago. We're in the middle of updating that guide, but going over some of the overview, and then also going over what resources you can further look into to make sure that you're prepared for any emergency or disaster. So we'll go over a little bit the risks and hazards in New Orleans, some business disaster 101, finance and operational considerations, thinking about your physical property and asset protections, communicating with your audience, and then additional resources. And then we'll cap it off with just a program that the Office of Economic Development and NOLA already have soft launched, and that we'd love for you to be a part of. So feel free to stop me at any point, especially since it's a small group, and we'll go from there. So as you know, we are in the middle of hurricane season. It is very important to stay connected, especially at this point. We're in peak hurricane season, which means just like we saw with Hurricane Idalia, that's impacting Florida, these storms can come up at any point in time, particularly between now and mid-October. But it's not the only risk that we look for or that we have to plan for when it comes to emergency preparedness. In this year alone, and just like the last year alone, we've dealt with, hard freeze, we've dealt with tornado. We're currently dealing with extreme heat, which actually isn't listed here, so that's a good prompt for me. And in other cases, we have seen things like, the Hard Rock building collapse and, oftentimes power outages. And so when we say, planning for emergencies, we're not just here to talk about hurricanes, we're here to talk about all the different types of emergencies and how you can stay prepared as a business owner and making sure that your employees and or clients are also prepared for these emergencies. So some recent emergencies to think about when we talk about emergencies, thinking about COVID and how COVID was not your typical emergency, right? Somewhat similar to heat, but not entirely. New Orleans became an early epicenter for the COVID pandemic. Nationally, it's impacting a lot of limited accessible community care options without a reliable safety net. And so these are some things that, we've seen businesses shut down during COVID or after COVID because of just the impact that it had on the economy. And I say it's similar to the heat because unlike, emergencies such as a hurricane or a power outage, we're dealing with this type of emergency ongoing where, we're likely continuing our operations, but having to think about those contingency plans for if it gets worse than we expect. Another notable example is Hurricane Ida. We just passed the 2-year mark on Tuesday. And so, as I'm sure many of you remember, Hurricane Ida caused significant power outages. This is something that we're thinking a lot about and thinking about often on the emergency management side. But it's something that we want to make sure that business owners are also considering in terms of what does your business do if when we face another situation like Ida or another COVID-19. In some cases, like I mentioned, it might be a continuation of your operations through the emergency. And in other instances, like Hurricane Ida, it may just completely disrupt just everything in the city at the time. So according to FEMA, more than 40% of businesses never reopen after disaster. And then for those that do, only 29% of businesses were still operating after 2 years. And so disasters of any type can be really costly for businesses. I'm sure that you all know this in more ways than one, even resulting in permanent closure. But successful businesses understand that preparedness is not just about bracing for the next big one. It's ultimately successful continuity planning that enables business owners to run their operations as efficiently as possible without what disruptions may come their way. So there's a lot of components to think about with business disaster planning. In some instances, we know that businesses might decide to hire a consultant to help with their business planning. In other cases, you might have, a team of one and it's just you. And so, again, this is a lot of information, but I'm going to try to hit on some of the bare bone pieces that you can do just starting after this meeting. And then other instances, you might want to talk with your employees or other business partners, or, figure out what makes most sense for you in terms of how in-depth you all want to go into business continuity planning. But the ABCs is what we call for business disaster planning. The three main components is making sure that you all don't lose money, making sure that your brand is protected, and making sure that you're communicating. And those are really the three pillars to business disaster planning. And so we're going to dig into a little bit about how we can address some of each of these pillars. Again, a lot of this you can actually do on your own. At the same time, some businesses or organizations have, hired out a consultant to help them with a more in-depth planning process. Businesses come in all shapes and sizes. It's really up to you to take the time to plan on how you're going to react, to give yourself a better chance of reopening quickly. It's not too far off from thinking about hurricane preparedness, right? If we can put these pieces in place in advance, it really saves us the heartache and the anxiety of having to figure out what to do when the disaster happens. So there's a lot of good reasons for you to plan for the unexpected, but mostly to protect yourselves, preserve the bottom line, and following the ABCs of business disaster planning. So a lot of business continuity operations plans, I'm gonna start calling it COOP now, but continuity of operations plan, it's designed to ensure that your business is able to continue performing essential functions and facilitating a smooth recovery following the disaster or emergency. COOP plans should be capable of implementation anytime with or without warning. It should provide full operational capability for essential functions, not later than 12 hours after activating it. And it should be capable of sustaining operations for up to 30 days. And so thinking about what does it take to put those pieces together, and then also a successful COOP will include regularly scheduled trainings and exercises. So we'll dig into some of these pieces. Again, we do have a guide. It's called the Business Continuity Guide, which can be found on the NOLA Ready webpage. And I'll share that link in a little bit. I also am not, why don't I come to the comments and questions after when we get to the Q&A, because I see that we have quite a paragraph in there. Let's see. So emergency plans at the very least should include life safety procedures. So thinking about, what do you do if there's a medical emergency? What do you do if there is a scenario like a tornado that happens last minute? Also thinking about what happens if you have to do an immediate evacuation. So thinking about fire drills, active shooter, and also, going over your hurricane evacuation plan with your employees, not just for you as a business, but you as an individual. One of the things that we see is that, having that conversation with people that are in our networks about what happens if we're going to have a hurricane, what's your plan? Are you going to stay? Are you going to go? Where are you going to evacuate to? These are all helpful prompts for people that oftentimes people put off because you have the, chores and the duties of the day to day. And oftentimes we don't want to think about the emergency until it happens. But again, setting aside a little bit of time in advance to go over these plans with your clients, with your employees, is more proactive and going to help with the anxiety and heartache on the front end.
Anna, if you want, I could tell you basically that message in the chat box. She says she's signed up for NOLA Ready alerts, and she was at an event yesterday, and the NOLA Ready rep basically said that you don't have to go to like an evacuation spot, that you can stand at any bus stop to access transportation out of the city.
So that's a great question. So so we do still have the evacu spots. So the evacu spots, it looks like a little stick man waving. The most prominent one you might know is like in front of Louis Armstrong Park. And so those locations are still active and relevant. What we found over the years, though, of having exercised the city-assisted evacuation is that having just those 17 locations is not very equitable for the entire city, right? Like we might have a greater need to evacuate people who can't evacuate on their own in parts like the Lower Nine or Algiers or the East. And so while we still do have those evacuee spots, we've worked it out with RTA to say, what the message is now if you are in need of assistance to evacuate. And this would only happen if the city were to declare a mandatory evacuation. Instead of worrying about getting to one of those evacuee spots, the overall message is that you have to get to the Smoothie King Center, and that's where the centralized registration is. And so RTA will run a Saturday scheduled bus schedule. Those evacuee spots will still have buses going to them to pick people up. But rather than trying to register people at each of those 17 spots, we've centralized it to the Smoothie King Center so that now you don't have to worry about getting on the bus necessarily. You just have to get to the Smoothie King Center. So whether that's by getting dropped off, whether it's by biking, walking, ride share, as long as you can get to the Smoothie King Center, if we're doing the city assisted evacuation, that's the bigger message. It is on the NOLA Ready website. We haven't pushed this out over text or email just yet because we haven't had a need to. That hasn't been a plan that we have needed to activate just yet. And so we're hesitant to tell people, hey, you want to go to the Smoothie King Center because it could vary just depending on when we do the evacuation. So for example, during Ida, we because of the rapid intensification of the storm, it didn't give us enough time to do a pre-storm evacuation. So instead, people were sheltering in place. And what we did was we activated the post-storm evacuation, which is different from pre-storm. And so during Ida, we evacuated people to state-ran shelters through the convention center. And so trust that if we're doing the city-assisted evacuation, if the need arises, we would absolutely be sending this out via email, via text, coordinating with the media so that you do know where you need to go if you're in need of assistance to evacuate. But we definitely don't recommend that you wait until this, you rely on the city assisted evacuation as your main way of transportation. Like if you have your own car, if you're able to get out yourself, we highly recommend that. And we highly recommend you fill up your car with friends, family, pets, so that, we're helping each other out. But the city assisted evacuation is a last resort. Public doesn't know any of that information. So we don't put it out over text because, like I mentioned, we send out the emergency alerts. So when an emergency is happening, we definitely have it on our website. It's in our information. I'm happy to get some hurricane brochures distributed. But, that is part of the challenge is that because evacuee spots have been so ingrained over the last 10 years, or last, I guess, 15 years, we're really working on updating that messaging. We would be absolutely pushing that information out when the need arises, and we're activating this plan. And so I completely hear what you're saying. It's a lot. The evacuee spots are honestly the bane of my existence because everyone remembers them, and it's something that we're trying to overcome, but it's a slow process because of how ingrained it is in people's memories. So, if the city assisted evacuation becomes an option, just like during Ida, we would absolutely be sending this out through the text, through social media, through traditional media, in all different various means. But at this time, because we don't have, that need ahead of us just yet, we haven't really heavily pushed it out to people. So some things that you want to think about, again, these are bare bones. These are things that the information I share may feel overwhelming, but really it's as simple as sitting down with, your key team and answering a few questions. So for example, if you do have a hurricane that comes through, does your business require you to continue working through that hurricane? And if so, who are some of the basic staffing or services that you're providing, and how are you going to provide that, right? So thinking about, if something can't be interrupted, or sorry, functions that can't be interrupted for 12 hours and must be resumed within 30 days. So, thinking about those situations and figuring out, do we need this entire staff to continue working remotely? Do we tell the staff to take time off and care about their families while we have, maybe one or two staffers continue to maintain those services? Do we send out information just in general, letting folks know we're actually just shutting down? So identifying and prioritizing what are the essential functions of your business and what's needed through every type of hazard. So fire, a hurricane, tornado, extreme heat. So, if you own a restaurant and say the cooler goes out and you can't get it fixed for 12 hours, like what's the plan there? So part of, identifying and, covering what are the essential functions, also thinking about what is the order of succession and delegation of authority. So if one person's in charge of HR and payroll and that person, for some reason, you can't get a hold of them, maybe they have a medical emergency, a family emergency, who's the next person that's authorized to help make that decision or act on behalf of that department head or agency head? It's specifically to continue that operation and make sure that you're building in some redundancies so that if for some reason one person is unavailable, like how do you continue your operations? And then thinking about what should be predetermined, what should be documented in writing. Are there policies that you want to have in place? For if your business predominantly works outdoors, do you want to consider having a severe weather policy, right? In a lot of instances, it may just be that it's some light rain. In other instances, you might want to consider, closing down for the day if there's lightning out. So thinking about those things and figuring out how do you cross-train personnel to fulfill these essential functions, so that, again, your business can continue to its normal operations during any emergency. So protecting vital records. So vital records are similar to a personal side, thinking about whether or not you want to have electronic and or hard copies of these documents and records as needed to continue the essential functions in your continuity of operations plan. The two basic categories of vital records are emergency operating records and then legal and financial records. And so again, if you lay out some policies or the order of succession for your business, making sure that's in writing so that everyone is on the same page of, well, this is what we discussed. This is what we have down in writing. It's possible we discussed something else, but we didn't put it in writing. And so we have to go over, what the written policy is. So that's going to be super helpful to help, get through difficult decisions as they arise during emergencies. And then on the legal and financial side, I think that's pretty straightforward, but something to consider is having it both a hard copy and electronic copy. It also doesn't hurt to bat things up in a cloud, so that if you need to access it from anywhere, then you have it available to you. If your business floods, you're not relying on just the hard copy documents. So taking the time to make sure you have these documents in place, again, saves you a lot of heartache and anxiety on the front end and not having to worry about it when, grants and loans become available for businesses. So we're going to cover a little bit of financial and operational considerations. So insurance is going to be the primary recovery resource for you and one of the best asset protection tools. So some policies to consider are, fixed assets and peril, business interruptions and paramedics, cybersecurity. Do you have all the documents you need to file an insurance claim, and is your insurance sufficient? You might want to consider spoilage and mechanical breakdown coverage if you are a business that deals a lot with food. You might want to also consider supply chain disruption or utility disruption coverage. So there's a lot of different insurances that I think maybe SBA covered on Tuesday, so I won't go over it too much. But just thinking about, again, what types of insurance are necessary for you and your business. Not every insurance may be needed, and you may not you may decide that it's not in your business's best interest to get every type of insurance, but what makes the most sense for you and your business. If your business is, or your building is impacted by disaster and you can't return to the area for some time due to hazard, do you want your staff to work remotely? Are there documents on a cloud, or can you host online work meetings? COVID really has helped to make virtual meetings much easier and much more of a norm as we are experiencing right now. But what is the plan for asking staff to telecommute or do remote work? And then thinking about, if you're asking them to do that, do they have the necessary equipment needed to do that? Like, do they have their own laptops and cell phones? Or is there another office in a different city that they can use for workspace? So just thinking about, again, all the tools that you need, your employees need in place so that they can work from home or any location away from the office. So that can be a successful continuity tool. So something that we very much encourage, and which is great for Office of Economic Development to have these workshops and these meetings, is being able to network. And so not only thinking about, what can you do for your business and like what your business needs, but also networking and talking to other businesses, whether it's in the same industry or a similar industry or completely different. It can be really helpful to network and find out, what does this organization or business do during this type of incident? And is it something that you can mirror? Is there somebody who's very seasoned in continuity planning that can help you through navigating some of the trickier parts of the financial and insurance documentation? If there's like a nearby restaurant that can offer to help out, thinking about mutual aid agreements or community partnerships can be really helpful. So like, for example, if your power goes out on your block, but the next block still has power, is there someone that that you can borrow a generator from? Who can you share resources with in your community, and who can you refer clients to, thinking about disasters? So very much thinking about, if you're interested in setting up mutual aid agreements, again, that's something where you can arrange with another business or organization to help you keep running if your building is impacted, as well as protect your equipment and supplies. So for example, is there another business or organization that would be willing to share their warehouse space if needed? These are some things that you can either have, you can discuss with other neighboring businesses or just other business owners. We would highly encourage having a mutual aid agreement so that when push comes to shove and you do need to lean on that support, you have something in writing that says like, hey, this is what we agreed to. Just want to see if we can actually activate this. So another area of business continuity that gets covered is thinking about physical property and asset protection. And so thinking about, how do we protect your inventory and perishables? How do we protect your building? How do we protect your business from cyber attacks? It's critical for food service establishments, especially like supermarkets, restaurants, convenience stores, drugstores, to take precautions to protect their perishable foods and medication. We're definitely seeing more growth around initiatives like Get Lit, Stay Lit, which is to put solar powered generators on restaurants to protect, that inventory from spoilage. Proper planning will not only reduce property and economic losses. It's also going to assure that, if you have frozen food or vital medicines, that they're available when they're most needed to the community. So something important to consider, especially, is a spoilage prevention plan, particularly thinking about like electrical power. Is it necessary for you all to invest in generators to keep your business running, especially when we think about food establishments or drugstores? And then if a generator is not available, are you all in a position to be able to rent a refrigerated truck or any other type of mobile refrigeration? Also thinking about just like the basic day-to-day emergency supplies for your business, especially if you have a physical location. So do you have fire extinguishers? Are you using surge protectors? Fun fact, but it's actually really important to change out those surge protectors every couple years because they do, have a limitation on them and they can they can cause fires. And so that's something that can often cause indoor fires. Do you have a first aid kit? This one sounds pretty basic, but you'd be really surprised the number of people who don't have a first aid kit in their home, much less in their business. So thinking about what happens if someone has an like a minor accident and requires some Band-Aid or requires some gauze. And then also, the threat of cyber attacks is very real and expanding. I think it was in the past year, maybe year and a half, that Creole Creamery's Instagram account got hacked. And so it is becoming more common and more dangerous. And so depending on the motive, cyber attacks might use computers, phones, gaming systems. It might include identity theft or fraud. They might just try to be causing problems or try to hold you for ransom, So these are all very real things that people are dealing with, and businesses in particular. So just something to consider as you're thinking through your business continuity plan. So communication, I would say this is the heart of the entire continuity of operations plan. Whether or not you decide you're going to continue your essential functions or whether you're going to close down until the hazards pass, it's critical to get this information across before, during, and after any catastrophic event or emergency. Precise and timely and relevant information is essential for you to maintain trust and credibility, whether it's for your employees, whether it's for your customers and vendors. It can help in the decision-making process that may affect personal safety or productivity. But most importantly, it's vital to help provide rapid and appropriate assistance to those who need it following a crisis. So, given its important role, crisis communication really has to be an integral part of any effective business continuity plan, and not come as an improvised afterthought. So every business should have a crisis communications plan to ensure accurate information is provided before, during, and after disruption, which will minimize problems caused by untimely or misleading communications. So some things that you might want to consider, we have, various ways of thinking about the crisis communications, breaking it down by, who are you communicating to, what are you communicating, and how are you going to communicate it? So thinking about, not just your employees and customers, thinking about also your suppliers, your creditors, your neighboring businesses, being able to provide this interoperable communications, provide capabilities to communicate within your organization and to stakeholders around your information. Some things you might want to consider and maybe template out a quick 1 or 2 sentence. Maybe it's a small letter, maybe it's a paragraph, whatever amount length that you think is appropriate. But, thinking about how do we template some of this out? So, some information you might want to include in your crisis communications plan is, what happened? What is that effect on the business? Especially for employees, what is that pay and personnel expectation? Are you expecting your employees to continue working through a tropical storm or a hurricane, or is pay going to be suspended until you open back up for normal operations? How will this impact your delivery, right? If you had deliveries scheduled for 4 days from now, but the storm is coming in 2, making sure that you're reaching out to your suppliers and letting them know, hey, we're actually not going to be open to receive this shipment. How do we do that? And then also making sure you include some sort of contact information if somebody has questions or follow-up concerns that they can reach out to you directly. And then some other ways, thinking about the method, we do text, we also send out emails, we also do social media on the NOLA Ready side. Something that we have some templates for you to use is thinking about a phone tree. So, if you have like 5 or more employees, thinking about rather than you calling each individual employee, maybe you have 20 to 50 volunteer, or 20 to 50 employees, rather than you calling every single one of those employees, building out a structure so that you call 5 people, and then those 5 people each call 5 people. So, from your calls, you've now been able to help reach, up to 25 people. And then imagining those 25 people call another 5 people. So kind of figuring out, how do you share this, the weight of making sure you're communicating information to your stakeholders. It doesn't have to be just on you. This, again, can be a team effort. This can all be very much templated out, really thought about in advance. Word of mouth is also another option. The most important thing is to not rely on any one way of any one method of contact. So just because you have some emails lined up to potentially send out, that shouldn't be your only way to let folks know, because not everyone checks their email regularly. Sometimes people respond and receive information better through text. Sometimes it's through social media. Having that redundancy is going to cover, I call it the cover your ass policy, the CYA policy. But covering your ass, so making sure that you've definitely communicated this out and you've done your due diligence in making sure that people know what's going on. So some steps that we recommend is, especially if you have more than one person, if it's more than just you that owns the business, figuring out, who might be your communications coordinator. This person would be, this person might be responsible for helping to create the message templates, creating employee emergency cards. It may be the person who just presses send whenever you all decide it's ready to send. Things like that, that can be, again, not just on just you as a business owner, but can be a team effort, because really it impacts your brand. And you really want to try to maintain that level of trust and transparency with your clients and with your vendors, whomever you're trying to communicate with. So some questions that we put together that you might want to consider for the employee, thinking about, is it safe to go back to work? And what's being done to assure my safety? Do I have to report to work? Do I have to report to work if there's a tropical storm coming? Will I be paid if the office is closed? How and when will I be paid? And will this job still be available if the crisis is over? Sometimes it's not easy to answer some of these questions with "I don't know." But again, transparency is honestly is the best policy of being able to say, it really depends on this situation. I can't give you that guarantee. What I do know is that we're going to continue to communicate what information we know and provide you updates. So it could be as simple as that. If you do know whether you're going to continue to pay your employees if the office is closed, that's fantastic. But being able to communicate those expectations so that your employees know what to expect if this disaster comes their way. For your customers, you might want to consider, when will I receive my order? And if you can't send them the order, like, how are you going to make this right? Are you going to refund them? Are you going to give them a gift card for another date? Are you going to send a replacement item instead? Things like that, that you might want to consider for your customers. For your suppliers, thinking about, are you going to need to cancel or, reschedule your order? When should they consider resuming your deliveries? And where do you want them to ship your current shipment somewhere else? With creditors, oftentimes they're kind of being proactive and saying, because of this disaster, reach out to us if you need to, have a modification on your payment schedule. But being able to reach out to your creditor in advance, being proactive is, again, going to be much easier on the front end than waiting until the disaster happens. And then neighboring businesses, particularly if the disruption is caused by your business. So thinking about, for example, if for some reason there's a fire or a power outage that your business accidentally helped cause, or that your business is a part of the disruption, how is this going to impact their business? What are you going to do to prevent this from happening again? Again, building that goodwill and trust is really crucial to maintaining that good reputation and brand protection that everyone seeks. Like I said, multiple means of reaching key stakeholders is so crucial. So not just text message, not just one of these things, but multiple. So if you have the capability to set up your phone, your voicemail on your phone, your business line, making sure you do that, making sure you're posting on social media. If you have a business website, putting just a little blurb on the homepage saying, hey, we're actually going to be closed for these dates until the emergency is passed. We'll reach out, we'll reach out as soon as we maintain where we start normal operations again. Having a message templated out, you can absolutely have the same message template, but just plan to have that posted in multiple various ways so that you're covering all your bases in case somebody calls you, emails you, or texts you. So your business crisis communications plan, again, if this is the one thing that you take from this presentation, it's crisis communications. We feel as strongly about crisis communications to communicate to the public, and it pretty much is the same for businesses. So thinking about how are you going to communicate a message out as quickly as possible. Using social media as a communications tool is great, but also thinking about what makes most sense for your clients and employees. Maybe social media isn't the way you usually communicate with your employees and your clients, and that's okay. Social media oftentimes get used as a blanket, but thinking about who is your audience, who's your target, and how do I best reach them? Being able to test and exercise your plan, also super helpful, especially if you have more than if you have another pair of hands to help you, thinking about, okay, like let's role play as if we have a fire. Let's role play as if we had a power outage in the middle of the day. Thinking about those things can be really helpful to really seeing what the feasibility of that plan looks like, and then making modifications as you go along and gather more information. And then connecting to your business community, how are you going to reach out to other businesses? Is that something that you want to communicate to other businesses? Maybe they can help let other folks know. Maybe you're able to refer clients to another business in the meantime while your business is disrupted. Things to think about, but parts of the crisis communications plan that are all very important. So I've talked a lot. I'm almost done. I just want to cover a few more things. So all the things that I just talked about in the last few slides, they're listed in the New Orleans Business Continuity Guide, which is available on the NOLA Ready website. So if you go to ready.nola.gov, which I'm going to put in this chat, under plan, there's a section there specifically for business owners. You can also find this resource and the business continuity guide and the building hardening guide under our resource page. So these are all information and guides to help protect you and your business that we want you to really utilize. If there's something that you feel is missing, or that you feel like you could, like it'd be helpful to have more background or more resources or more information about, absolutely please do reach out to us, whether you reach out through the Office of Economic Development or you reach out to NOLA Ready directly. I often talk with the Office of Economic Development and stay local to figure out how can we make emergency preparedness more accessible to business owners. Some things that you want to consider, SBA talked about a lot, I'm sure, about their disaster loans and grants. On the federal level, oftentimes, we're looking to FEMA for grants through public assistance or hazard mitigation. A lot of times there's a minimum threshold for the declaration. So for example, while Hurricane Ida, Hurricane Zeta were recognized as federal disasters, they were declared as federal disasters. The Algiers tornado, while it did impact residents, didn't meet that threshold for a federal declaration. So something that the city has been working towards doing is, figuring out what is our own rainy day fund to support, the city's operations, and so on. And so, we're actively thinking about how do we, while it's important to know about these federal disaster assistance streams, also, like, what can the city do? What can the state do to help support businesses during hard times? Something that we've soft launched, and I'm really excited to tell you about, is NOLA Ready's Partner in Preparedness program. It's designed to engage and support you as a business owner in preparing for emergencies. So a lot of what we just talked about is really the goal of Partners in Preparedness. We also are a small yet scrappy team of 4 in the NOLA Ready team. And so, even if we each did, 100 presentations in a year, it's only 400, events that we're able to tackle. And so the way that what we're hoping to do is really help support business owners and employers, and also have you all as business owners and employers amplify our message of, having people make sure that they review their personal preparedness plans. The last few years have definitely proved to be hazard heavy, whether we think about the Hard Rock building collapse, COVID, the hard freeze, the tornado. Right now we're dealing with extreme heat and, rapidly intensifying hurricanes. We just want to make sure that we're able to have businesses and institutions think about how to reopen after these challenges, and also, have you help us in amplifying the need for personal preparedness. You can find more information about Partners in Preparedness by following that link. There's also a button on our homepage that says Partners in Preparedness. But essentially, it is, again, to encourage businesses to prepare, and then also thinking about expanding preparedness outreach. So, what are the things that you benefit from at becoming a partner in preparedness? We want to make sure that we get timely and focused emergency information out to you. We've really been working with Office of Economic Development and figuring out, the best process for getting emergency information out to you as a business owner. You are absolutely able to request, preparedness brochures and emergency information. We're happy to come drop off brochures for you if you're willing to display them. We have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of brochures, a lot of handouts, and it's completely free for the public. Our mission is really to make sure that people are prepared and informed for anything that comes our way. Part of the program is that we would also recognize you as being a partner in preparedness on our website. We hope to start developing special Partners in Preparedness events. We're actually waiting on a FEMA grant to come through to fund a 2-year position specifically focused on business continuity and supporting businesses through emergency planning. So that's something that, I want to put on the radar that we don't have in place yet, but very hopeful that we have that in place for 2024. And then lastly, we feel that, NOLA already has a lot of great name recognition and credibility and trust, and that's something that we want to leverage to our partners in the community. And so becoming a partner in preparedness, we would get you a seal and a certificate to display your commitment to preparedness and show that you are being forward thinking about your business, about your employees, and about your clients. So those are just like some of the benefits offhand. Oh, I guess I left the slide out about being very easy. It's a very easy commitment. You can find more information about the program on our website, as well as templates for sending messages out to your employees or your clients. A phone-free template that you're able to use, and also some of the checklists that SBA talked about on Tuesday. Those are all on our website under the Plan for Business Owners and under the Partners for Preparedness webpage. Lastly, we do have this business continuity presentation, but it's not the only presentation that we do. We are very often asked to come out to talk about hurricane preparedness as a whole, where we will, talk about what the city is doing, and then also how you can prepare as an individual and then also for your community. We also work with the health department and EMS to provide other types of trainings, such as bystander response, stop the bleed, overdose prevention, and hands-only CPR. The hands-only CPR is a much more condensed version. It doesn't give you a CPR certification, but it is super helpful if you're looking for like a shorthand version, maybe a hour training on how to do CPR correctly. And last but not least, we do manage the NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps. So this is something that we also encourage you to look into. The NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps really sprung up right before COVID. And so, you know, we've asked volunteers to do all sorts of ways to support our emergency response or the city's emergency response. So we've had volunteers help with COVID vaccine outreach, help with community vaccine sites, not necessarily giving the shot, but, you know, being a greeter and helping to explain what people can expect when they show up at the location. We had volunteers at cooling centers during Ida. We have volunteers do hurricane supply distributions. Right now, we're actually looking for volunteers to help with 2 upcoming exercises. EMS is having an exercise on September 18th. I believe it's going to be like a mass casualty incident exercise that EMS is leading. And they're looking for volunteers to put makeup on and kind of role play the incident so that they can test their emergency plan. NOLA Ready is looking for volunteers for our exercise coming up on October 6th, where we're really going to test out the emergency resource center plan, which is essentially the cooling center operations. You know, Ida was really the first time we were able to do the cooling center operations, and we felt it was so successful that we wanted to turn it into a formalized plan and make sure that we're thinking about, you know, the wraparound services as they become available, how to slowly integrate that into each center. And so we're looking for volunteers to help with that as well. If you're interested in participating in either of those exercises, feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to get you signed up. Alternatively, you can sign up to be a NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps and you'll get these email updates as opportunities become available. So with that, I will open it up for questions and say thank you for listening to me speak for, you know, basically an hour straight. It's a lot of information. And so I will stop here.
I think you did an awesome job. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. I was getting ready to say you're getting your praises in the chat
Yeah,
box.
thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of the NOLA Ready team. We have a lot of very dedicated staffers, and I know there's a lot of information. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I will make sure that Margaret gets the link to the PDF of the business continuity plan to share out. Again, it is on our website. Let me just share one more screen about the partners in preparedness page really quick. Again, this is on our website. If you go to ready.nola.gov, it's under Ready Year Round. But if you go to the home page, there's also a button here that says Partner in Preparedness. And so in here, it talks a lot more about Partners in Preparedness. We made it so that it's specific. It's very much designed to be very easy for you all as business owners. A lot of this is stuff that you already probably do. It's just a matter of like checking off the boxes. But on this page, you'll see more information like draft email for business employees. There's the FEMA Business Impact Analysis Worksheet. There's a great resource here called Tester Plan. We did not design that, but it's helpful for you to think about for your business. And then the phone tree template that we talked about. So a lot of great resources. And then I would say, you know, if you all are coming across additional resources, please send it our way. We would love nothing more than to share anything that's available for people, especially when it comes to emergency preparedness. And if you have recommendations, we're always also looking for your comments and feedback, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that what we're talking about works for you and that you understand, you know, what we're trying to communicate.
Thank you so much. As you see, everybody really appreciate you know, everything that you've informed them of today. You will give me that link and I'll send that to you guys within 24 to 48 hours. All the information that she provides, I'll send it to you guys. And like she said, if you ever need her, she's definitely there. I'll provide her email address for you. So if you want to contact her at any time. So with that, are we having any other questions? All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, especially Ms. Nguyen for that important information provided. Within 5 to 10 business days, this session will be available on the Office of Economic Development YouTube channel, along with previous recorded sessions. This will conclude this series of business information sessions. Remember to check your email for any upcoming sessions in the future. Of course, thank you guys once again. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you the next time.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, everybody have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.